This session I'm very excited about. Elliot, welcome back. You decided to come back for day 3 here.
It was a challenge, but now you've got me, man. I am hooked.
Now you're hooked. We got Ryan, David, welcome, Josh, Buck, James, and a lot of people joining right now. Welcome. Thanks for joining again. Feel free to just drop questions in. Nathan, good to see you. Greg, Andrew. So drop in questions throughout the conversation today. So this is the third day. We're doing this topic is unlocking new markets and niches. As a recap, on Wednesday, we talked about the mechanics of efficient rental growth. Yesterday, we talked about the anatomy of building a powerful sales team. Today, we're talking about unlocking new markets and niches. And next week, next Wednesday, the final session is for Quickly users only. We're doing a hot seat. Ask me anything. Everyone's going to be on the video. We're going to go around and, going to be on the hot seat with Elliot. It'll be more, I'm not interviewing Elliot. You guys are talking to him directly. So that's the final day next week. Final thing to look forward to. So as we kind of jump in for today's session, I thought it would be good to do a couple minutes recapping what we talked about on Wednesday and Thursday. So Elliot, kick it over to you. Love to, if you want to recap sort of the talk what we talked about with business planning on the first day and yesterday, the importance of building a powerful sales team. Love if you want to just recap what we talked about the last 2 days.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Kyle. Once again, I appreciate you building this and setting up this platform. It's been a lot of fun for me. Very thought-provoking conversations with everybody that's logged on and thrown in the questions. So thank you, because it's really got me thinking as well. And I could tell yesterday where Kyle and I kind of went down a couple of little rabbit holes. I was like, man, we're not even realizing we're on a podcast. We're just having a great time. So kind of what you said was, what the first one is, how do you set your business up operationally? How do you set up a structure for success? And my big thing that I believe in is you don't need to be everything to everyone. Pick what you're good at, pick your plan, write down your plan, and do it better than anyone else in the market. And quote, you build it and they will come. And I think you need to look at, the type of fleet you have. We all make spontaneous purchases. We all do things we want to help out that one customer with that one rental for that one time. And basically all they're doing is using us to spend $10,000 for a tool they're going to use once and want to rent for $500. I would encourage you to look at your utilization, sit down and look at your customer base, have lunches with your key critical customers and ask them what they could do or what recommendations that they would make for you to grow your business. The Pareto principle, the 20-80 principle, who are your 20% of your accounts that give you 80% of your revenue that's going to fuel your future success? And then the next part of that is yesterday we got in pretty hard on sales, went down a few wonderful rabbit holes. And the big thing with sales is hire the right people. You don't need to scale at a crazy level. You can do sales if you're a business owner on Wednesdays and Thursdays. You go out and visit your key accounts. You can go to their offices. You can send out thank you cards. We recommended that every company sends out 10 thank you cards to your critical accounts, that you reach out to those customers and try and do lunch and learns with the customers, or that you do open houses, a lot of different things where you don't necessarily have to have a full-blown sales team to build your sales. You also want to make sure that you do a printout of all of your accounts from 1 and 2 years ago to see how your customers have changed, because maybe you need to reach out to those customers that have left you and see what you can do to reignite those relationships.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think what we've really tried to do the last few days is they build on each other. The first one is getting your plan together, deciding what you want as an owner. What are you going to do? Okay. Now you're selling, you're getting customers, you're building a sales team, right? And today we're going to talk about new markets and niches, which is sort of could be the opposite of what we talked about on Wednesday, right? The niches to riches, focus, focus, focus. And now we're talking about maybe expanding to new niches, right? And I think there's a tension there that we'll get into. So before we get to that, I already got a question from Josh from Cardinal. Good to see you, Josh. Just to kind of recap again, we're talking about the planning side of things. Can you talk about the difference of when to use time utilization versus dollar utilization as a metric? Obviously, those are two most really important metrics. Depending on who you talk to, they'll tell you one is more important than the other. Do you have a perspective on that, Elliot?
Absolutely, I do. So here's the biggest thing is that you know which equipment. And if you don't know, there's lots of resources out there to explain it to you. But if it is a seasonal rental, And seasonal rental are your ground heaters. Seasonal rentals are your top hat heaters. Seasonal rentals are your air conditioning units. Seasonal rentals are your aerators. All those seasonal rentals, you need to look at dollar utilization. So if it's anything in your business that is used less than 50% of the year, and not just 50% of the year because it's a one-off that you bought, but 50% of the year because the market dictates when it can be used. We're not using heaters. We're not using aerators in the middle of December. I don't care where you live. And you're also not using top hat heaters in the middle of August. So when you know those things, I would clump those into look at time or look at dollar utilization as how do you need to make sure that you're getting your money back on those units that are extremely low time utilization. So you need to maximize your dollar ute. On the flip side, a 19-foot scissor, most common thing rented in America. And a 19-foot scissor, you can't use dollar utilization because you're going to realize your rates are junk. And you're going to say, how am I getting, hypothetically, I won't talk, specific rates, but let's just say $500 a month for a 19-foot scissor, and you bought that unit for $12,000. Your dollar utilization on that is junk, but you're renting it almost 75%. You have a 75% time ute, which means you have an amazing time utilization, and you'll get back your money based on really high time ute.
It's a great explanation. I haven't really heard it described like that. That's another little snippet we got there. Great question, Josh. So, Elliot, I'm going to get into the prime time here, unlocking new markets and niches, right? I think it was a good recap of what we talked about the last few days if people weren't there. So I've got my one location. I started it myself. I've got my niche. I've got my 2 salespeople. Things are good. Why should I think about expanding into new segments? And what are we talking about, new segments? Are we talking about new fleet, new locations, new customer segments? This is all new to me, Elliot. How do I think about that?
Well, way to open up a can of worms right off the get-go. I can count on you for conflict, which makes for a great podcast. So let's start from the beginning. And here's what ends up happening. You open up your branch. You fill up your yard with fleet. You reach out to your neighbors, your friends, people nearby. People drive by and find you. And what ends up happening is that the business comes to you. And that's awesome. I love it when the business comes to you. Here's what ends up happening. We become very comfortable with that. We don't need to drive the numbers. The numbers kind of drive themselves. And so we sit back and we look at our business and we start catering to who walks through the door. And all of a sudden somebody walks through the door and they say, hey, do you guys have a flooring machine? I need to get my floors polished. And that person stops by, somebody else stops by, and then you're buying a floor polishing machine. Now, the truth is you look at when you started your business, you had 5 skid steers sitting in the back because you were hoping to get into the skid steer, small contractor, landscaper, underground utility kind of person. And all of a sudden you're buying floor machines and floor pads and polishing machines and all this goofy stuff you know nothing about. So when I say you need to know what your niche is I often recommend that if you look at your fleet, what is underutilized? Your opening question, which we didn't know what the person was going to ask, was do we do time utilization or dollar utilization? If your time and dollar utilization is low on any specific piece of equipment, how can you get your money out of that equipment? And that should be the one thing where you start looking at specific markets. And somebody says, oh, no, we have all the landscapers in this area. Perfect. I don't need you to change it. You can have all the landscapers. How many property maintenance companies do you have? What? Well, you go look at any apartment complex, any school district. You go look at any big office complex, and somebody is in charge of landscape and facility maintenance. Guess what they rent? Skid steers. Now, do you need to change your business model? No. You go look for the niche or the markets that match what you want to bring in fleet-wise. You know what your rates could be. Here's the best part. Most of the big 5 rental companies aren't calling on an apartment complex. They're not calling on a chain of hotels. They aren't calling on the school district. They're calling on Kiewit, Swinnerton, and Skanska, which means that there's less market competition and better rates. Now, the downside is they're not as frequent of renters, but they're much more loyal and they get a better rate. Your second part, yeah, go ahead.
No, go for it.
Your second part of that is do you change up your fleet? And I am a huge proponent. If you don't have the ability, I don't know every aspect of Quipley because I don't own a rental company. I work with all of them, but I don't own one. Are you looking at lost opportunities? And how do you capture that? And the crazy thing is oftentimes somebody calls up on the phone and says, hey, yeah, this is Kyle's Rentals. Yeah, I'm looking for a floor polisher. Do you guys carry those? And the person answering the phone says, nope. Okay, thanks. I'll go call someone else. But did you enter in a lost opportunity? And what you may not realize is that there are multiple people that are calling you up, and your website, because you took a generic screenshot, shows a floor polishing machine, even though you don't stock them. And so you're getting phone calls and you're driving traffic, but are you looking at missed opportunities? And here's the other one. Maybe you do carry skid steers and you're doing a great job where you're at 50, 60% time or dollar utilization, and you're doing great. But what you don't realize is that there were 7 phone calls that came in and you didn't have one in stock, or the one you had was down short, or the one you had didn't have a grapple bucket on it, or a mulching attachment. Are you looking at those missed opportunities? And is the person on your inside counter, or is your sales team logging that gap? Because I think that that's a huge thing, that many a times we stay in our lane and we don't realize our lane's expanding, and we're just not willing to capture that moment and do the extra work of missed opportunities.
Yeah, that's great. Or missed rentals, missed opportunities, right? Logging that. And then also looking at where you have low utilization on certain items. And like you said, you may have 100% of a certain market segment in Cincinnati, but where else can you rent those things? That's the hard work of like thinking, critically. And, a lot of times, like we talked about on Wednesday, letting not, you driving the business, not letting the business drive you, right? So this is you driving the business, right? And it sounds like, yeah, things will be good. Things are growing. You're happy, getting customers every day, but are you actually taking full, advantage of the market, right? And this is what we're talking about: new markets, new niches. What are some other ways to, generate some new segments for us to look into, right? We're looking at missed rentals. We're looking at where we're low on utilization. What are some other things we can be doing to start to identify some of these opportunities?
Go to where you're comfortable. And the crazy thing that ends up happening is that many of us, we go to the same places every day. We go to the same bar, we go to the same restaurant, we go to the same thing. But what we never do is we don't roll up. And, I give a famous story. I had a day where I was riding with a sales rep. And me and the sales rep were out rolling around, and he picked me up at the hotel. And we rolled up, and I said, hey, you mind if I grab a coffee? He's like, sure. So we swing into Starbucks. We're standing in the parking lot of the Starbucks, and I'm drinking my coffee. And I said, hey, what are they building at Target? He says, what do you mean? So what are they building at Target? He goes, nothing. I go, well, no, they're building something at Target. He goes, what makes you think they're building something at Target? I go, well, see those 4 or 5 containers in the parking lot? I said, those are storage containers for a construction site, which means they're building something at Target. And he says, listen, man, you're not from this market. This is my hometown. My wife shops at that Target. She would tell me if there's something going on. There's nothing going on at that Target. And I told him, well, why don't you just entertain me for a second? Let's drive behind the Target. Oh, man. We drive behind the Target. Everybody on this call knows exactly what we saw. There's a skid steer. There's a jumping jack tamper. There's a mini X. There's a walk behind saw. There's 3 or 4 scissor lifts. There's a couple of pallet jacks, just a plethora of fleet sitting there. And I said, what's all this? And he just stood there, just dumbfounded. And I mentioned that because here's the thing. How often have you gone to your grocery store and never asked, who handles all your maintenance on the building? Who does all your lighting? Who does all your datacom and telecom? I shop at King Supers or Kroger grocery store. And one day, I'm not kidding. Actually have the company. It's called Source Communications. And Source Communications does the entire western region of the United States for datacom and telecom for all the Krogers and King Supers. And it all started with me buying groceries with my wife. And I walked up to the store manager and I said, "Can I ask you a dumb question?" And you could tell he was like, and I go, "Who handles all your lighting, telecom, and datacom?" And he goes, "I can get you the guy's phone number and you can call him." And I did. And he gave me that company's name. It turned into 7 scissor lifts on rent for 2 years plus trailers so that they could just move them around all night long, fixing all that datacom and telecom. So when you talk about niches and specialty markets, I don't need somebody to go out and become the ultimate salesman of turning over every stone. You walk into places, and what you don't do is drive down the back way. You don't drive down the back alley and realize that your Home Depot that rents equipment has 2 scissor lifts parked behind it from rental companies to fix the lighting and the broken fire sprinklers inside that Home Depot. Dang, why did I miss that opportunity? Why didn't I talk to the branch manager? I don't know. And so you'll be amazed that you go to a fancy restaurant, there is maintenance and all kinds of things happening after hours. And just like we all use at our yards, in our equipment yards, we grab an E300 electric boom lift or a Z300 boom lift, and we go out a 3020N, whatever you want to call it, if you're Genie or JLG or whatever, and we grab that and we go out and we fix all the lights in our parking lot. We think nothing of it because it's what we do. How are the parking lots lights fixed at your school, your kid's high school, the college down the street, the community college, the apartment complex, the hotel? Oh my gosh, every one of these is an opportunity. And all you need to ask him is, who handles all this for you? Do you self-perform or do you sub it out? And guess what? You've just tapped into a massive market that your competitors aren't even interested in. And you can do a great job servicing for 1, 2, 3 day rentals at book rate, which everybody on here knows the value of a book rate deal for a week or less. And they're not going to beat the heck out of your equipment. And that's a great way to make money with loyal customers. But we make a big mistake, and that is we try and compete with, let's go call on Kiewit, let's go call on Skanska. And as fun as those are, man, I'll let somebody else give away really cheap equipment at terrible rates, and I'll take all of the thousands of other deals that most people just walk right past.
It's interesting. So the first thing you said was like, look at your data, look at your missed rentals, look at your utilization, numbers, data. Second thing you said was just drive around the places you're already going, go to the back entrance and be curious and ask questions. And it reminds, I talked to an investor, I heard him talk once, and he said, he's a very successful guy. He said he owns a substantial part of his net worth to investing in companies with weaker competitors. And what he was saying was, play in the blue ocean, not the red ocean. Don't play where all the competitors are, where there's blood and everyone. Don't keep calling the same companies that everyone's is calling, right? Play where there's uncover a stone and there's no one there, right? And I think that's what you're getting at. You're driving around the back of the Target or the back of the Starbucks, the back of the Home Depot, which is a rental company itself, right? And they're not even renting their own stuff. And you can, because there's no other players there, you can charge list price. You're going to have very happy, loyal customers. They're just happy that you called them to begin with, right? That's sort of the beauty of all this, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you, I have never heard that phrase, play in the blue ocean, not the red ocean. Man, is that a powerful statement? Because too many of us were like, look, there's blood in the water, let's go play there. Man, that's a quick way to just get chewed up. Where if you're playing in the blue ocean, just like you just stated so eloquently, go out and find all these markets where they're not getting pounded by 15 salesmen a day. And you would be amazing. Like I go out and I work with rental companies all over the nation. And I say something and it shocks me as I say, how much are you calling on TI work? You hear that silence? That's what I hear every time. Just everybody goes, and I'm like, wow, that's really awkward. I said, do you know what TI stands for? And they all go, no. And I said, TI stands for tenant improvement. And what tenant improvement is they build an entire strip mall. They build all of these amazing things. And when they build that strip mall, they go out and they sell a chunk of that strip mall to Macy's. They sell a chunk of that mall to REI, Sporting Goods. They sell it to a nail salon. And then what happens is it's up to that person to go in and do the build out for Crumble Cookie, to do the build out for REI. Well, each one of those is known as tenant improvements. And it doesn't matter what part of the country you go to. I was just out doing sales calls in Minnesota, and the guy said to me, oh, yeah, we do a lot of TI work. And I'm like, just to make sure we're on the same page. TI stands for tenant improvement. He goes, yeah, what else would it stand for? And I'm like, well, there's sales reps that tell me they've never heard that phrase. I said, it doesn't matter what market you're in. Tenant improvements is a huge opportunity. It's not as big. These scissor lift rentals, the pallet jack rentals, all of these small things are probably going to be less than 2 months because they have aggressive schedules. But the opportunities, and just like you said, it's blue water, not red water.
Exactly. I mean, even in our experience, our core customer base is, equipment rental companies, brick and mortar equipment rental companies. That's who we serve. That being said, we have uncovered some stones of groups you wouldn't think of as equipment rental companies. They're not competitive to our core customer base who are using our software. And I mean, there's no one else there, list price, right? So we've seen it on our own, and we only got there from, uncovering these terms, asking questions that most people weren't asking, right? So we've seen it for our own business. I'm curious for you, Elliot, if you think about in your career, maybe your top 2 or 3 deals you're most proud of that you generated, potentially, particularly new niches. I think you mentioned the Coors Brewery example previously when we had talked. If you think about your top 3 deals you're most proud of in your career, were they groups that were established groups that everyone is calling on, or were there things that you uncovered? And how did you actually uncover some of those?
That's a great question. I think one of my favorite one is landing Coors. And the reason why is because the Coors deal ended up being a 128 cycle bills. So we all know that in the industry, 4 weeks equals a month or a cycle bill. And so you're getting 13 cycle bills in a year. And I had stuff that was out there for almost 10 years. And, it's crazy because you just watch that money every single month. And I was like, man, and guess what? When I showed up there, nobody called on Coors. I was like, how do you not call on that? But here's the thing, all of these breweries, all of this, everything. So I'll give you a story, and it kind of plays off of it. I was doing sales calls down in Texas, and I was riding with a sales rep, and I take a lot of pride in throw me to the wolves. You know what I mean? If I'm going to claim to be great at sales, it's not taking me down the red carpet. It's taking me down the back alley and still winning. That's how you know you're good. And so this woman that I was riding with that day, she said, well, you say you can sell to just about anybody. I said, oh, I definitely can. She goes, perfect. We're going to go in that warehouse. I go, what's in there? She goes, I don't know, but you said you could sell to anybody. Well played. Well played. And we walk in, and there's this wonderful woman, and she walks up. She's going to help you. I said, hey, I'm Elliot. This is Michelle. I said, we work for a big rental company. I was wondering if you ever use or utilize scissor lifts, forklifts, booms, pallet jacks, any of those things within your warehouse for either maintenance or manufacturing. She goes, nope, not one of them. And I look over, and the woman looks at me, Michelle, the sales rep I'm with, and she's like, and I go, do you mind me asking what you do here? She goes, we build breweries. I'm like, really? Like, what do you mean? She goes, a lot of these new small microbreweries are kicking off all over the United States, and we manufacture the kettles that they brew all the beer in, and we ship all those products, and then they set it all up, and they start a brewery, and we have different packages. I go, let me ask you something. I said, I'm from Colorado. We lead the nation in breweries per capita. She goes, we go to Colorado almost every month. I said, can I ask you one question? How do those get installed? She goes, what do you mean? I said, when it comes off the truck, I said, are you just showing up and then they have to figure out the scissor lift, the boom lift, the forklift to get it off the truck and install it and all that? Or do you help with that as well? She goes, that's not up to us. I said, wouldn't it be nice if you offered up an entire package? She goes, what do you mean? I said, when they get all this brewery equipment from you, you have a rental company that shows up with the equipment they need to fabricate it all and build it. She goes, give me your card. Turned into one of my best accounts.
There you go. You walked into the warehouse. Who knew what was behind the door? Could have been anything.
Yeah. And here's the thing is it's something that nobody would have thought about. You know what I mean? And so now we have a package. She didn't care what the price was because they bill it to all the breweries. Yeah. But when it showed up, it was exactly set up the way the brewery needed to have the equipment. Now, that was a benefit of a national footprint. But here's the thing, almost every hotel chain that you bump into, it's like the game Monopoly. They own multiple hotels, and there's a maintenance company that covers all of that. Mm-hmm. But yet nobody's calling on those maintenance companies that control all the hotels.
Yeah, it's spending a little time not going after the obvious ones that everyone's going after, but being a little creative and being curious and walking into buildings and calling on people that maybe feel not as comfortable. We got a few questions I want to get to. One, question, how do you think about rental expansion strategy? So how do you think about adding more locations, renting the same type of fleet, so just kind of duplicating what we already have in different cities of the fleet to the same type of customer versus expanding fleet type and working with different niches? So that, you've got a location in Cincinnati. Do you have one in Columbus and Cleveland with the same sort of model, or do you stay in Cincinnati and start getting new fleet, working in different niches? How do you sort of think about the different options there?
So I had the luxury of working with a company that completely failed at this. When I worked for Ahern, they broke into the Florida market, and the strategy was ready, shoot, aim. And I hate to say it, but ready, shoot, aim does not work.
Like that guy at the Olympics, he was like, with two eyes.
Just hold that picture. Bam. And we've all seen that. But here's what I would do is do your market research. Look at where you're sending fleet. Obviously, like you gave the example, if I'm in Cincinnati and all of a sudden my core customer base is saying, hey, can you send a forklift to Columbus? Hey, can you send a scissor lift to Columbus? And I'm like, look, this is an hour and a half drive. What am I doing driving all the way to Columbus? And why am I driving an hour and a half? Then what you need to do is you need to go up and you need to do a market analysis. Great thing, since, every one of us now can use Chat GPT, you can use AI, you can use the internet. What are the fastest growing markets within 200 miles of my current location? And growth in both residential and commercial. And then look at that and evaluate who are your competitors in the market. Are they really strong? Are they really weak? Is it someplace where there's multiple of the big five? Or is it someplace where you're like, I can't believe I would be one of the only people playing in this market? It's easier if you go into a market that is not already oversaturated. One of the key things that we all notice is the last 10 years have been a massive amount of acquisitions. And the reason why is it is easier to buy somebody who has their claws into a market than to build it from the ground up. So that's a second part of this, is that if you're going to go into a new market and you're going to do a cold start in that new market, make sure, one, you have the capital, make sure, two, you do your market research, and number three, have a conversation with your customers of what immediate opportunities they can give you in that market. Make sure that new market is hopefully not more than about 2 to 3 hours from your current location, so that you can properly share fleet and you don't have to do double the fleet in two markets, only to find out that your utilization isn't there and you burn through a ton of money. Okay. That would be my biggest chunk of advice on that. I would also make sure that you do some probing, maybe have someone come up and do sales calls, so that when you go in, you're not opening up the branch and spending 6 to 8 months waiting for everyone to find you, because it may not happen. No.
And the cold starts are hard. You got to be able to stomach that, right? The capital investment. The other thing we've seen from groups doing especially if you have a website and e-commerce, is you can launch a digital presence in a location to test demand, right? And if you get an order, you re-rent it, you figure out you're 2 hours away from your location, you can move the equipment. So we've talked to several groups who, as a way to limit your cash investment up front, is you can launch locations on your website to start, testing demand. And once you start seeing what sort of rentals you're getting for a certain piece of equipment, et cetera, then you go buy those, right? So there's ways to, as you said, test this. You do the business planning, but you ultimately have to test this, right? There's low risk ways to test it rather than go buying $1 million piece of property. Let's kind of get there once you've already proven demand, right?
That is, yeah, I love that. It's not an aspect I thought of. That's why it's your forte, is you tell somebody, hey, we're coming to this market,
Yeah.
and you see how much traffic it drives and what rentals you get. And then when you show up, you've already got a foundation of just enough revenue that you're not just digging yourself a hole. I think that's brilliant.
And on the, expansion side, we put out a report 2 or 3 years ago, and we maybe should do another one. But with Google, all this data is accessible. So you can see Google search volume for different pieces of equipment by city. So you can see how many people search for equipment rental near me in Houston versus Dallas. And then you can map that to the number of rental companies, and you can sort of do a plot. Okay, which cities are the most underrepresented from an internet search volume, which is, we've talked about on other episodes. 80% of renters are going to your website before they're actually renting, right? There's a ton of data online to help inform all this as well. So a few more questions. Actually, we got 4 questions. So let me see here. I think there's some more questions on the sales side, which I think we'll come back to at the end of this episode. But thinking about expansion into new markets, one question, are there any types of partnerships that can help expanding into a new market? So if you are adding a location or you are targeting a new customer base, is there a way to make it easier? Can we partner with different groups to sort of to help with this expansion strategy?
Absolutely. I am a huge proponent, and that's a great question, man. I am a huge proponent of, is as much as we all want to win, I think that it's important that you find good rental companies, honest rental companies, and you partner up with them, because none of us have all of the fleet all of the time. It just doesn't happen. And if somebody calls up and they say, hey, I need 2 Genie 842 reach forklifts, and you look in your yard and you say, I don't have them. Wouldn't it be great, instead of saying no, say, let me tell you about a business partner I have, somebody I've collaborated with that's an hour away. I know he has 3 of them sitting in his yard. And then what you hope for is that you can reciprocate that. So, obviously nobody wants to say, hey, you're coming into my market and you're going to steal the market. But if you say, hey, we're coming into the market, you can't take care of every one of them. Do you want to throw those big deals to anybody, fill in the blank, throw it to Home Depot? Or do you want to throw it to a specific company that you could be a partner with that helps share the load and take care of your customers? I think there's a couple of other partnerships there. I would look at, which I mentioned on the prior podcast, I would look at, could you join some of the associations, the homeowners association? A homeowners association does a ton of rentals and projects. Could you sit down on the school board? School boards spend a ton of money and are looking to put in new playgrounds. They're looking to put in new sidewalks, every one of those. And then I would look at the Builders and Contractors Association, the Hispanic Contractors Association, the Glazers Association, the Electrical Association, and I would even look at some of the colleges that put out courses specifically for building and construction management. And you reach out to them and say, hey, can I drop off equipment? Can I partner up with you so that I'm building a reputation in the market I'm going to be in or the market I'm currently in? And it's all stuff that's, quote, guerrilla marketing to expand your footprint without having to pay $80,000 for search engine optimization.
Yeah, for sure. And I like your partnership to kind of put into 2 buckets. One is other rental companies, which I think is important, because I think there's probably an element of like, why would I ever talk to my competitors? Well, if you're doing the right thing for your customer, right? Sometimes it is to give you to competitor, and karma kind of goes both ways. We have 2 rental softwares that we partner with because there's certain customers that are better fit for them and vice versa. And, put some goodwill out there. starts to come back. So I love that you mentioned that. I think that's important for the whole rental industry to work together. And number two, you mentioned associations as well, which I think is a great point. Another expansion question: before adding more locations, what types of systems or tools should be in place to ensure a smooth expansion? So I am adding another location. What do I need in terms of the systems, tools, people? How do I think about that?
Um, this is one that I watch a lot of people mess up. So phenomenal question. Because what they do is they go in and they buy everything that's at their first location and say, well, that's working. But what they don't realize is it took 7 years to build that location, and it didn't start with 18 employees. It started with 2 or 3 people. I would find somebody who is and good luck finding them. It's tough. Find an absolutely catch all, do all rock star branch manager. This is the person who has a CDL or isn't afraid to drive a dually. This is the person who knows how to do an oil change and can plug something in and isn't afraid to swap out batteries. This is the person who knows how to start a generator and run a jumping jack tamper. This is the person who can put in an order and shake a customer's hand and meet with a vendor about, we need to buy a lube rack for inside my shop. The number one thing I would have is, if you have one of those rock stars, pay them every penny that they're worth and let them start it going. And if you've got that person, you could start with a basic skeleton crew and maybe have 2 or 3 people, a driver, a mechanic, a good branch manager who's willing to get his or her hands dirty. And all of a sudden you've got the core. And then what you do is you share fleet and share orders with your existing branch. Share the workload. And if you need to transfer fleet, transfer fleet. But you don't need to make it a standalone location with its complete separate P&L and everything, because what's going to end up happening is it's going to take on too much burden from the company. I would believe in growing it incrementally. Is obviously, if somebody calls up, that small branch gets an order for 5 forklifts and they only had 5, but the main branch has 12 and they've got 2 sitting, you ship one over so that there's something sitting in the yard. And you share that fleet and increase, number one, is utilization. The reason why you're looking at expanding your footprint right now is one reason: utilization. If I had another market, I could grow my utilization. So let that drive the decision of how you grow your business. Most people, if you coach them properly, your customers will understand if you say, hey, I need 1 day. And if that's what it takes for you to get it, the other thing I would look at, find a great outside hauler to do over the road in the evening transfers. And here's what I mean by that is it consumes a ton of time. But if you can have an over the road night driver who starts at 9 o'clock, rolls up to your yard, you set up 4 pieces of equipment, you load them up on a low boy, you drive them over, and it doesn't have to be your driver. And the next morning, the branch rolls up, they open their gate, and guess what? There's 4 pieces of equipment sitting there that got transferred overnight. Some of those key elements with sharing fleet and growing intelligently is the biggest thing. Don't do like a lot of the companies do, where they throw their wallet at it and then they don't realize the goal is to increase utilization. Footprint will come, but not at what cost.
And that's what we talked about on Wednesday: efficient growth, right? It's not growth, all sustainable growth. And you said don't throw your wallet at it, but you also said almost throw your wallet at your general manager. And you sort of said the same thing around your mechanics, right? Earlier, pay them every penny you can. One thing that's common in software companies, every company I've worked is they give equity to all the employees, something we do at Quickly. So everyone here is, and one of our values is act like an owner. Well, you are an owner, like legitimately are an owner. And I don't know as many rental companies are doing that, but if you can get a top tier general manager to do the work, right? The utility player, everything you're talking about, they need to do, which are hard to find. Pay them and also align them with the success of the business, right? We've seen in my career, like, it's just a good thing when you align people, and it doesn't have to be 50% of the company, but something to incentivize people I think is important. And there's one thing you didn't miss on this system side is obviously you need rental software, right? If you're adding locations, making sure you got a great rental software, of course, Elliot, right?
And I'll tell you that right now. Here's the biggest thing, and this is what I've learned. I'm old school, but the thing is I can say I'm old school, but if I showed you right now my pager or my roll of quarters for using a payphone, everybody on here would say I was an idiot. But yet I watch people right now, and I won't rip on it, but there is green screens that people are putting all of their orders in just because it's the way they've always done it. Well, guess what? I've always used a pager. And people would say, well, you're an idiot. Okay, so I'm going to turn that right back around to you. I've always used a green screen. Well, so
Yeah,
if you're
separate. Yeah, exactly. Separate topic. That's our thesis here. We're not going to get into the Quickly ad as all, but
yeah, but I will tell you, I'm not gonna advertise for Quickly, but every single person knows you have to evaluate your business. Are you elevating it, or are you just doing stuff the way you've always done? That's the definition of insanity.
mhm. Another question. I want to get the sales question. I'll sort of wrap up here at the end. But in terms of again, expanding into new niches, market expansion, how can social media be used to spot new trends and understand what customers want? Because you mentioned you're old school. You got to get in the car and you drive around the back of the Target, right? But social media, it's not new, but it's not old either, right? So how do you think about social media as something to spot new trends, understand some new market segments to enter into?
You and I both have built our business on social media. So when I was growing up, my dad always said the same phrase to me. He goes, son, it's not who you know, it's what you know. And I said, oh, that's really, really smart. It's what you know. It's what you know. Now, the crazy thing is with the internet, everybody knows everything. And then the phrase changed to, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Problem is now everybody's so well connected, you can know just about anybody. I could go online and I could find out, Kyle, you own Quipley. You're the top guy. You're the leading guy. I can find out and I could literally call up and say, hey, is Kyle available? I need to talk to him. How do you know Kyle? Oh, yeah, we're old friends. And people would never know. So here's what the next generation is. It's not who you know. It's who knows you. Now, that's what social media created. It's not who you know, it's who knows you. So when people go out, nobody wants to be sold. If everybody right now on this podcast, I give you a homework over the weekend, it is proven that Friday, Saturday, Sunday, social media time increases by about 30%, which means that most people, when they want to, quote, relax or they want to sit out, that's what they do. They burn time on their Saturday and Sunday. But if you sit and you look at it, all of your customers don't want to be sold on their off time. So you will watch, and if you put out a commercial, you just said it 2 seconds ago on this very podcast, Elliot, I don't want this to be a commercial. And the reason why is because we all go, watch.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, you flip onto something and somebody says, let me help you learn how to do basic maintenance on the lawnmower you already own. So I own a rental company, but we do small engine repairs every day. And oftentimes we have customers bring us small engine repairs. Here's 3 things you can do as a homeowner to get the most out of your lawnmower. 1, change out the fuel filter. Untwist your spark plug and run a piece of sandpaper over the tip of the spark plug to clean off the connector, because sometimes it gets corroded, or put a completely new spark plug in. Make sure you change out your oil and you put new oil in it, and look at it. Just by doing that, guess what? There's somebody sitting at home and they're like, man, that's good information. And all of a sudden you become not the sales pitch, but the quintessential expert, somebody who genuinely cares. None of us need more salespeople. Not one person in our life is waking up tomorrow morning saying, oh man, I hope somebody knocks on my door and sells me something. That has never happened. But here's what does happen. I wish somebody would come over and help me know what I need to do to get another year out of my lawnmower. And if you're the person who brings that value to people's lives, they will literally throw their wallet at you because you added value to the marketplace. So you can sit there and I'll give you 3 of them right now. Any rental company on here, show somebody basic small engine repairs. Show somebody how to rent a pull saw or a boom lift to do some of their fall tree trimming safely and effectively, making sure they have ropes going the right way so they don't damage the equipment or kill themselves. And then last but not least, how to use mini excavators or skid steers for some of their landscaping projects around the house by encouraging people and showing them. One of my good friends is literally putting out videos right now on how to effectively use a scissor lift, how to effectively use a boom lift. And we all want that piece of knowledge, and nobody wants to raise their hand and say, I don't know how to do this. If you give it away free, people will pay you for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of what you talked about the other day is around building trust, and people buy from people they know and they trust, and the 5 interactions, right? And you can do the 5 visits virtually now on the internet. And we had a guy on the Rental Roundtable, Skyway, I believe in Florida. He's in the Tampa area, only 2 or 3 years in. He's built his entire business off of TikTok and YouTube videos. How to fix equipment? How do I operate X, right? And he is now, I think, 15,000 followers on his YouTube channel, and it's all word of mouth, and that's how he's built it. And I think it's around building good content, using social media. The other side of it is also using social media to identify opportunities in your market. So when you're on Facebook and you're seeing people talk about certain things in the homeowner group, and hey, what's going on with this? I don't know how to do X or Y. Being the expert, solving those problems, putting content out to solve, you can also use that to identify opportunities in your market or other expansion opportunities as well.
That's exactly right. And the thing is I think that each one of us makes a huge mistake is that we don't utilize free, free opportunities to connect with our customers when they want to connect. If somebody's sitting on excuse the phrase, if they're sitting on the toilet at 2:00 in the morning and they're on social media, why aren't you in their feed? And guess what? That's the moment when they're sitting there and you can resonate with them rather than, hey, you know what? Kyle's playing with his kids. Hi. Yeah. And like I said, my Forrest Gump wave, Kyle, do you want to talk to me? No, Elliot, I'm right in the middle of playing with my kids. But if you're messing around on TikTok at 2:00 in the morning, I'd love to be in your feed, brother. And I'd love you thinking about the value I bring to the market.
Yeah. I had 2 new customers I talked to today. I asked both of them how they hear about us, and they said YouTube. It's like one guy's watched 3 hours of videos this morning before the demo. Like, you know what I mean? Because people want, the Rental Roundtable, there's content that was interesting, and I think it's important for everyone to be doing that. I know Josh has a question, and he works at Cardinal with Bryce, and Bryce puts out awesome videos, right? So I think they know that pretty well. I want to sort of get some of these other questions on the sales side. I guess, that's your expertise here, Elliot.
Yep.
One question, how do you structure sales compensation for rental?
That is a brilliant question. So here's the thing. I don't know how to do this, but you're the technology guy. So I will send you over and you can share it with any of your members. And it is a compensation package that I came up with. So I'm going to give you the short and narrow, but I actually have a full write-up. We couldn't cover it in the 10 minutes we've got. So here's the short and narrow. Most of the rental companies out there, you want your sales reps to be uncomfortable. And everybody kind of cringes because they're like, no, I don't. I want them to be really comfortable. The problem is sales reps hunt best when they have a reason to hunt. If you hire on a sales rep and they say, hey, Elliot, I need to be making $100,000 a year. And I say, perfect, I'm going to pay you 110. And I'm going to give you a pickup truck. What incentive do they have to go out and land you new business? And I watch tons of rental companies where they hire these sales reps, they pay them very lucrative packages, and they hope they're going to perform. And the truth is the sales rep is comfortable. The enemy to success is comfort. So here's what I recommend. Put them on a 1-year, first year, $100,000 guarantee. And what ends up happening is that guarantee is based on a certain amount of revenue produced every month. So I'm going to give a very simple example of $50,000 a month in revenue produced. And you're like, they would never do that in the first month. Nope, they wouldn't. But if that number goes down by, or it increases by $5,000 a month. So your first month, you want the rep to do $5,000. That's a couple of skid steers, a couple of mini excavators, a forklift, whatever it is. You want to produce 5,000. The second month, they need to produce 10. And then on and on and on and on. After 10 months, they should be producing $50,000 in revenue. Now, if you set that incremental growth and that incremental expectation, they know what they need to be doing. And what you do is you plot it that if they don't hit their goal, their revenue, their guaranteed salary goes down. And the biggest mistake that companies make is they say, hey, I'm going to guarantee you $100,000 in your first year. And then nobody knows what the expectation is. And then you get to the end of the year, and guess what? The sales rep's unhappy because they thought they did great. You're unhappy because you thought they did terrible. And the truth is nobody's on the same page. So I am a huge proponent of increasing goals, decreasing salaries, and I have that formula so that you come to equilibrium. Quote, the salary is going down, the revenue or commission is going up, and so the two of them stay right where they need to be at, and the rep continues to make $100,000 a year as long as they stick to plan. But if you just sit there and you say, hey, I'm going to wing it and pay them 3% and a $80,000 base, they might be able to live on $80,000 a year and whatever deals you give them. The other thing I would do is if you assign accounts, if you give business, let's say you've got a business, your business is doing $100,000 a month in revenue, and you hire on a sales rep, and you assign all of that revenue to that rep, and you pay them 2-3% of that commission. Now they're making $30,000 to $40,000 a month in revenue. Guess what they did to earn it? Be very aware of how you pay sales reps, and I am a big proponent, last plug, KPIs, key performance indicators. I would give a sales rep, because people always ask, do I pay them 3%, 5%, 8% commission? I would pay them what you feel comfortable with as a company. The industry average is 3 to 4%. But if you paid them 3% commission and you offered them KPIs, key performance indicators, that were each worth a quarter or a half of a point, and they have 4 key performance indicators. If you increase your revenue by $10,000, you get an extra 0.25% on all your revenue. If you open up 5 or more new accounts in a month, I'll give you another 0.25%. Now you're 0.5% more that you're making on all of your revenue. If your average accounts payable, your customers pay, is under 90 days, and it may be different for your company, bigger companies pay slower. If it's less than 60 days, guess what? I will give you another 0.25%. And if your rates stay where we want them to be based on our individual company or Roush, I will also give you a 0.25%. Every one of these little things will direct the sales rep's attention and ultimately their performance.
That's really important to get that right. And Charlie Munger, people have heard me say this. What he would say is, tell me the incentive structure and I'll tell you the outcome. He was Warren Buffett's right-hand man, right? I mean, wherever the carrots are, that's what people are going to go to. So spend the time to get that right. I want to get to essentially one question and then a wrap-up question. Sort of, the theme here is mastering rental growth. So Ellie, I'd love at the end of this, we sort of do a recap everything we covered in the last 3 days. But for that, the question is, does a rental company need an outside sales rep? Can it thrive with only inside sales? And a question from Josh 30 minutes ago, I'm finally getting back to, really the best script you've heard from an inbound sales call, which again, you can't answer in 2 minutes, but sort of give some themes here. Do we need an outside sales rep? Can it only be inside sales? And what should the inside sales people be doing when they're talking to customers?
Perfect. No, you do not need an outside sales rep. And I am the king of outside sales reps. You just heard it here. You don't need one. But what you do need to do is you have to have outreach. You don't need to be out wandering around, but are you calling customers? Are they outbound calls or inbound calls? If they're only inbound, you're limiting the revenue you can capture. Guess what? Sometimes people need coaching and direction. I need coaching and direction. I need help sometimes. Sometimes somebody needs to call me up and say, Elliot, you need to do this. Both Kyle and I, for this entire week, we knew where we needed to be. Both of us had reminders that popped up on our phone because we need outside influences coaching our attention. So here's what I'm going to ask you all to do. What's the best pitch I've ever heard from an inside salesperson? If the customer is calling in or the customer is calling out. If the customer is calling in, the first thing I always say from inside counter is, Mr. Customer, our responsibility is to give you the best experience working with our company as possible. So I'm going to ask you a couple of key questions. I'm not questioning your intelligence. Our expertise is equipment rental, and I want to make sure I save you money, get you the right equipment, and make sure your project runs efficiently. So first question, where are you using it? What kind of soil conditions are? Who's my on-site contact? What's a secondary contact? If there was an emergency, who would we need to talk to? And I would make sure that you have the most detailed contracts on the planet. And ultimately, when you wrap up, how long do you plan on using this equipment for? And are you calling it off, or would you like a reminder call? Every one of those is going to save you revenue. It's going to save you time, and it's going to make you more efficient. Secondary part of that, if I'm an inside salesperson calling out to customers and I get some random person on a list, I would call up, and I'm going to pretend, Kyle, you're my customer. I would call up and I would say, hey, Kyle, my name is Elliot. I work for Elliot's Rentals. The reason why I'm calling you today is over the last 3 to 4 years, there has been massive disruptions in supply chain. I have seen a lot of companies that called up. They couldn't get F-150 trucks. They couldn't get baby formula or diapers. Many of our key customers have mentioned they had problems getting the necessary parts, the necessary contractor supplies, and most importantly, the necessary equipment they needed to have their jobs run efficiently. Kyle, can you think of any reason why you wouldn't want an additional vendor or supplier to help your company run efficiently in the coming projects you have coming up? Perfect. Is there a day or a time that we could meet with you or have a formal phone conversation to establish how we could be a future vendor for you to help your projects run faster, safer, and ultimately more efficient?
Perfect. Where do I sign? Redford said, this is good stuff. I'll have a replay a couple of times when the recording comes out. It's been awesome, Elliot, all week. I think just a reminder for everyone, Quipley users, Court's trying to plug, Court's got a little rental business himself, so watch out for Court. But reminder for everyone, Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern, special session for Quipley users. You guys will be up on the box and ask the question directly to Elliot, hot seat style. So reach out to us to make sure you register for that. But I guess the final question here, we got, what's the magic potion to make your beard look so great? That's a question maybe you can answer. But Elliot, maybe to sum up the last 3 days, what's the most important thing people need to know? We're talking about mastering rental growth. What do people need to take away from this?
Write down these four short little abbreviations. IQ. IQ stands for your intelligence quotient. You can't change it. You can't affect it. So we're not even going to talk about it. AQ. AQ stands for acquired knowledge. The biggest thing that Kyle's offering up here, and the reason why you're all here, is you're smart enough to try and acquire new knowledge. Don't let this podcast, don't let this video be the end. Make it be the beginning. What other knowledge can you acquire? What other things can you do to expand your understanding of your business, your customers, and the market? The next one is TQ. TQ stands for technology quotient. So your technology quotient is, what technology are you bringing to bear? And this isn't a pitch for Quipley. It's a pitch for new fleet, new ways of organizing your yard, new ways of processing your GPS. How can you run your business more effectively so that you are not wasting time on low priority, mundane tasks? Your brain has a limited amount of capacity. How much are you wasting it on things that just don't matter? Could you make your business run more efficiently with better technology, including how to map out your yard, return equipment, process orders, or GPS how to deliver? The last 2 letters is EQ. EQ stands for emotional quotient. Emotion is what causes motion. Are you emotionally attached to your customers? Do you care about them? Do you care about your employees? And do you genuinely have a plan for the future of your business? Care about it and be emotionally attached. And that why of why you're emotionally attached to your business will drive you through the tough times. Make sure you know those four. It's ultimately what separates the rookies from the pros.
Love it. IQ, AQ, TQ, EQ. Awesome stuff, Elliot. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you? They want to learn about your beard. I know you provide coaching services for rental companies too. What's the best way for people to contact you if they want to learn more?
Email me at Elliot, ELLIOTT, at elliotvigil.com. You can go to my website, which is elliotvigil.com, and Vigil is spelled VIGIL. So you look up, if you just Google Elliot V or look me up on LinkedIn, I'm out there a million without paying a dime. My social media has given me the top 30 hits on Google. So I'm pretty easy to find out there if you look up Elliot Vigil.
Awesome. It's been a great week, Elliot. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. It's 5 o'clock on a Friday here in Atlanta. So we're going to sign off here. Quickly, customers, remember, final episode, Ask Me Anything style, Wednesday, 4 o'clock. Looking forward to it.
Bring great questions next Wednesday.
Sounds good. Thanks, Elliot. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Have a great weekend.